In 1959, Walter Pitts burned his own doctoral thesis by hand. The firelight reflected his desperate face. He knew that the computational neuroscience he had founded no longer existed. It is said that this logic genius pointed out errors in Russell's mathematical principles at the age of 12. But he refused Russell's invitation. He ran away from home at 15. At the University of Chicago, he made a living by doing odd jobs and auditing classes. When he was 18, he met McCulloch, who was 44 years old. McCulloch brought him home. Over countless whiskeys and endless night talks, they used pure logical language to draw the first computational blueprint for the brain. In 1943, they astonishingly proposed that every neuron can be simplified to a logic gate switch. As long as enough of these units are connected, any computable task can be performed. In other words, the brain can be calculated, and thoughts can be generated. This idea inspired John von Neumann and others who forged the soul of modern computers. However, 15 years later, working together and staring at the retina of a frog in an experiment, they found that neurons were not simple logic gates. They actively sift through information, only responding to small and dark moving objects. Real nerve cells are far more complex than the models. For Pitts, in his pursuit of perfection, this was a devastating blow. He burned his doctoral manuscripts and other research, and finally passed away in isolation, consumed by alcoholism. Pitts's tragedy left a theme that runs through the century for future generations. Should we build a digital twin that perfectly replicates the brain, or should we extract the simpler principles behind it to build new intelligence? From that moment on, the explorers went their separate ways and headed to opposite sides of the mountain. The original road was a one-way street. Scientist Henry Markram took over Pitts's obsession, launching the Blue Brain Project, and ambitiously using supercomputers to rebuild the entire brain molecule by molecule. In his 2009 TED Talk, he passionately claimed that within 10 years, humans would simulate the human brain in the digital world. This vision was so shocking that the EU spent €600 million to launch the Human Brain Project, led by him. However, before this expensive tower was even topped out, it became divided internally. In 2014, over 130 top neuroscientists jointly protested, accusing it of being premature and excessively obsessed with bottom-up simulations. They questioned, even if we have all the bricks in the world, without understanding the architectural drawings, can we build Rome? In the end, Markram's grand vision was not fully realized. But this grand project left an unexpected legacy. A huge neuroscience data platform, containing an amount of data that cannot be fully interpreted. Subsequently, some explorers gave up their obsession with perfect similarity and turned to functional similarity. In 2012, a deep learning model called AlexNet emerged in an image recognition competition. Its core convolutional neural network structure simulated the visual cortex of the brain, utilizing a progressive processing mechanism from simple to complex. The era of deep learning began. In addition, scientists discovered that the brain's incredible energy efficiency is due to its event-driven computing method. Nerve cells are activated only when they receive a signal and rest the rest of the time. This is very different from traditional computers. Consequently, Intel's Loihi chip, Spinnaker from the University of Manchester, and other neuromorphic hardware emerged. They use pulses to simulate neural signals, with energy consumption only a fraction of that of traditional AI models. These explorations seem to follow the one-way path of brain-inspired AI. However, when the creation looks back at the creator, the mirror of AI begins to reflect the mysteries of the brain itself. When neuroscientists dissected the AlexNet model that won the competition, they were surprised to find that it had spontaneously evolved a hierarchical structure highly similar to the visual cortex of the monkey brain. As AI learned to see for itself, it evolved a brain-like solution. Similarly, when DeepMind trained AI to play video games, they found that a structure similar to grid cells responsible for spatial positioning spontaneously emerged in its network. Since then, the identity of AI has undergone a fundamental change. It is no longer just an engineering product, but also a virtual brain that can be repeatedly experimented on and disassembled. Neuroscientists finally have a dream weapon, a computational model that can simulate the brain and verify theories. They use deep learning models to decode electroencephalogram signals, with accuracy far exceeding that of previous methods. These models can approximate the images people see. They use AI to predict the response of neurons to new stimuli and to test various hypotheses about the working principles of the brain. The Blue Brain project tried to simulate the brain through brute force, but it struggled due to the massive amount of data. Now, AI models act as a Rosetta Stone, interpreting the vast amount of data in the brain in a more elegant way. AI has transformed from a passive student into an active mirror and exploration tool. It not only learns from the brain, but also helps us understand it. As they replicate each other, this feedback loop gets faster and faster, opening up a third path. It points to the ultimate fusion, human-computer symbiosis. In 2013, neuroscientist Richard Anderson implanted an electrode into the posterior parietal cortex of a quadriplegic's brain. This brain area encodes not specific muscle instructions, but the intention and goal of the action. Through data calibration and repeated training, when the patient had the thought of wanting a beer, the robotic arm could directly understand their ultimate purpose and smoothly reach, grasp the beer, lift it up, and bring it to their mouth. At that moment, the boundary between biology and electronics blurred. The patient's brain was learning how to send clearer intention signals, and the decoding algorithms were also learning in real time how to understand the language of the brain more accurately. Biological intelligence and machine intelligence began to evolve together at the ends of a hair-thin electrode. Borrowing the hierarchical concept of autonomous driving, this is just level 1 motion decoding. The path to true integration also needs to cross level 2 language decoding, level 3 visual decoding, and even the final level 4 stage, deep decoding and interaction of human emotions, memories, and cognition. In a way, from ancient knots to today's smartphones, and to future AI systems, through collaboration with tools, we are becoming more powerful hybrid systems and promoting the evolution of our minds. The dream and disillusionment of a genius opened the way for brain-inspired AI, and in its self-evolution, it accidentally became a mirror to ourselves, opening the feedback loop of AI feeding back to the brain. Now that circuit is moving through brain-computer interfaces, from abstract knowledge cycles toward embodied physical integration. We are not just climbing from both sides of the mountain to the top to complete a convergence. We are weaving with our creation to generate an unprecedented mountain. The self-awareness that will eventually be born will not belong to either humans or machines. It will be the consciousness of the network itself within this human-machine environment community. It is not our child, but a bridge for us to transcend ourselves. So, as the makers of this mirror, what we ultimately need to answer is not what machines will become or what we want them to be, but whether we are willing to admit that when thoughts can be extended, when perception can be shared, and when our boundaries dissolve in the torrent of algorithms and electrical signals, we may evolve into a new way of existence, even if that is no longer us.